outcome before it even started. You know, and the ultimate goal is to push people into the city, you know, and out of the suburbs. You know,
Yeah,
take-
and that's theory, and I appreciate the theory, but I just, I'm a simple woman. I like to
Okay.
have things, kind of meat and potatoes. I need examples, and that helps me
Okay,
understand.
one thing that's happening is, if you read about these land conservation easements, where farmers, in exchange for tax breaks, sign over the development rights to their land. Well, as development rights to all this land in the rural areas gets taken away, the opportunity to develop in those rural areas is limited. So then, that's one way of forcing people to have to stay in
Well,
the
how do you force
cities.
those if the farmer, see, I don't misunderstand, I'm not arguing because I'm in the middle.
Right,
So I'm
you're
just
fine.
trying to understand, and unless I do you know, this way, I won't understand. If the farmers agreed to sign to it, how is that forcing them?
Well, it's not really forcing the farmer, but if the farmer can't afford to pay his taxes and he's worried about losing his farm, and his only option is to enter into this agreement where he gets a tax break and gets to keep his property, it's a tough situation to be in. So if he takes that opportunity and signs over the development rights to his land just in order to keep it, you know, not thinking long-term, well, those conservation easements, they last a long time. So now the opportunity to expand further out into the suburbs and grow isn't there anymore, which will force people to have to go back into the cities. You know, that's one example. I wish I had better notes with me on the topic, but, you know, if you look at Agenda 21 from the very beginning, and the people who wrote it, it was written by a group of socialists, the main one being a woman named Rose Rutland. And the ultimate objective in the whole thing is to redistribute wealth. I mean, that's the object of all socialists. So it's a program written by a socialist, distributed by the UN, and that's if you look at the aspects of that program compared to the objectives of NEOSCC, I mean, they're perfectly aligned. You can't draw contrast between them.
I think an example of that type of thinking is our NOACA group that Medina County is part of with three other counties. It's money, a lot of that money is supposed to go to roads and highways.
Right, and it's
But
being diverted
branching out
towards
into
bike
everything
paths.
else, and we just told yesterday by a NOACA board member, funding for this area last year was $50 million. $6 million of it's going for bike paths. Now, I have nothing against bike paths, but with all the potholes and bad bridges and so forth we have now, I think that money should be better spent on highways, highway construction, but we're tending to want to branch it out into some of these other things that the government says is good for us.
Right, right. You know, they can't really force you to move into the city, but they can do things to make living in the suburbs
That's
as
right.
inconvenient as possible, so that you'll say, well, boy, if I go live in the city, they've got all these nice bike paths, and there's these new, you know, high-rise things that they're gonna give me a tax break on if I move there, you know. Nobody can really come right out and force anybody to do anything, but they can structure it in a way that it drives people out of the suburbs into the city. Anybody else? Next question.
Any other questions?
That's it, one question?
Total agreement, what you're saying.
I guess so.
Thanks, Chris. You're gonna be around for a little bit, in case people just wanna
Yeah, yeah.
get with you
A little
one-on-one.
bit. I
And
can't
did
stay
you have
too
some
long.
material over
I
here
have
on the
to get
table?
to work.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
also,
there, yeah. Go on.
there's a sign-up sheet. If you want to get involved in this campaign, if you like what Chris has said, please, give your information to Chris so he can contact you, later this week.
And also, one last thing, there's a document up there that I put together that's a list of my priorities and my commitment to what I want to do in the State House that outlines where I stand on 11 key issues. So if you want to pick up one of those, feel free to take it.
A man with a platform. Great. Okay, next on our agenda, this one too, it goes back a ways. I'm a veteran and I really don't like what's been going on under this anti-military president. Benghazi cannot stand. And I'm constantly on the lookout for organizations that can help us finally get to the bottom of Benghazi and make justice happen. I just won't rest until it does. One of the organizations that, another part of this, most people are still unaware that Obama has been conducting a purge of our top generals and admirals. He's been doing this for over a year now. Ever since he was threatened by generals and admirals saying the truth about the stand down order in Benghazi, he's been going through our generals and admirals like a lawnmower through a lawn. And I think that's a very dangerous situation. So I'm always glad to promote veterans organizations that are going to help do something about that. And Jeremiah, let's see, where's he at? There you are, okay. Why don't you come and tell us a little bit about your organization and what we can do to help you out? Jeremiah Martin from the Concerned Veterans of America. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. It's always a pleasure to get to spend time with like-minded Americans. You know, at Concerned Veterans for America, I do appreciate the kind introduction. Just a little bit of background, okay? 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago now, Admiral Mike Mullen, who was at the time the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he was asked in an interview by a reporter, what is the biggest threat to the United States? What is our biggest threat to our military, to our national security? You know, what's our biggest threat? And his answer was shocking at the time. It turned a lot of heads. I don't think it would be shocking to any of us, but to the media and to some people who were involved, it was shocking. He said that the number one threat to our national security is our national debt. And at the time, there was about a little over $14 trillion in debt, and obviously now we're over 17 trillion. So if it was true, you know, over 3 years ago, it's even more so true now. And as veterans, as military families, even as just patriotic Americans here today, you know, lovers of liberty as we are, if there are threats to our national security, if there are these threats, we have to realize that threats like this are not just overseas. Threats to our freedom, threats to our prosperity are not just overseas, national security threats overseas. And you would think that as veterans, and many of us veterans are, but you would think that we would be extremely concerned, if we're concerned, so concerned that we're willing to fight overseas in defense of our freedom, that we would be concerned enough to do the same at home. Unfortunately, what we're finding is that there's a lot of veterans, a lot of military families, that they're not letting their voice be heard. Many aren't registered to vote, or they're not actively voting. They're not getting involved in their communities, and they're not letting their voice be heard. Now, we're not a typical veterans organization, if you will. We're not your usual veterans organization. Many veterans organizations are out there lobbying for veterans benefits. And I don't want to discredit that, because I think that a lot of the work that they're doing is positive. But that's not the angle we're coming from. There's a lot of different organizations that are working on that. And so we're not just focused on veterans issues. We're focused on American issues. Okay? We are Concerned Veterans for America. And a lot of people get hung up on the veterans part. Well, I'm not a veteran, or I don't have a lot of military in my family. The emphasis isn't on the veteran part. The emphasis is for America. And how can we, as I said, continue that defense of freedom that we started overseas? How can we continue that today? And for all Americans, that should be priority. And I don't want to seem like I'm preaching to the choir. A lot of times I do when I'm speaking to different liberty groups, you know, because you guys are the ones that are involved. You're the ones that are coming out on a Saturday morning when you could be doing other things, to be active, you know, in this common defense of freedom. And so I don't want to seem like I'm preaching to the choir, but that's where we're coming from. And we want to partner with other organizations to see how we can work together on some of these issues. You know, I mentioned the national debt. We're concerned about that. We're concerned at overspending in Washington. We're concerned with the overall lack of accountability in our government. And so there are a lot of issues that aren't just veterans issues. But, you know, to go to the veterans issues side of it, and as I see some veterans here in this room, I think that we can attest to, if you're unaware, there is just massive amounts of dysfunction and mismanagement within the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Veterans Affairs is tasked as an administration to assist in the care and, you know, essentially the prosperity of our veterans. You know, what can we do to take care of our veterans now that they've come home from war? Unfortunately, in many cases, in many VA facilities, that care is not of a high degree. There's long wait times. As I said, there's mismanagement, lack of accountability, and I don't have a lot of time, so we can always talk about that later. But the point is, I know that there's some veterans here that could attest to this. There's long wait times, there's no accountability in the system, and generally speaking, many of our veterans are not being cared for within the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now, as a veterans issue, this is something that we have worked towards. Let's reform the Department of Veterans Affairs. Let's make sure that our veterans are being taken care of. But it's not just an issue for veterans. I have an article over here. If you're interested, I have a few handouts. I'm not sure I have enough for everyone, but I do have some handouts of an article that our CEO Pete Hegseth wrote. It's called Ask a Veteran About Government on Healthcare. And the principle is, it's not apples to apples, but the principle is, if you want to know what Obamacare looks like, ask a veteran. Ask them what government-run healthcare looks like, because it has not been serving our veterans. And so yes, it's a veterans issue, but it also has wide applications. One of the things that we've been doing, we've actually endorsed a bill. Thankfully, it's been fairly successful so far. A bill was recently introduced called the VA Accountability and Management Act of 2014. Basically, it does exactly what it says. It brings accountability into the system. Up to this point, like most government bureaucracies, it is nearly impossible to fire someone. Even if the gravest of offenses, it is very, very difficult to fire someone. We saw this with the with the failures of the Obamacare rollout. We've seen this with the IRS targeting. It is extremely difficult for there to be actual repercussions. You know, if we're lucky, someone might resign, but that's it. There's really no repercussions, and even then, take a step back. Down in Georgia, there were 3 preventable deaths at a Georgia VA facility that were, according to the Inspector General, were directly tied to the mismanagement by that VA facility director. Now, that VA facility director stepped down, but there was no other recourse. What we have just found in recent weeks, and this was a while ago, but we just found in recent weeks that director is actually still on the payroll, making upwards of $250,000 per year, despite resigning. The point is, and I can tell you numbers about bonuses that are being given out to executives, and I mean, in 2010, $5.5 billion were given out in bonuses in the VA system, despite increasing backlog, despite increasing preventable deaths. I mean, there's just a bunch of junk in the system. There's no actions of recourse. In fact, there are people that are getting bonuses and are getting pats on the back for their poor work. So we endorsed this bill. It got introduced. I think it's a positive. What it would allow is it would allow there to be accountability. that good workers are empowered while poor performers are able to be let go. And unfortunately, I mean, it's common sense, right? But unfortunately, that's revolutionary in our government. The good news is that we have, this is the biggest veterans bill. I don't mean as far as cost, but as far as the amount of co-sponsors and the amount of support, even so far, just as a brand new introductory bill, is one of the biggest veterans bill we've ever had. It has, I think, 36, as of my last count, 36 co-sponsors. It is a bipartisan bill, and some of that has been a lot of that has been due to the efforts of our volunteers all across the country, calling into people's homes and telling them about the issue and telling them, call your representatives so we can support veterans and make the system better. But all that to say, this isn't just, yes, it's a veterans issue, but it's something that we should all be concerned about, whether we have a veteran in our family or not. Because, personally, I haven't had to go through some of this junk at the VA. I am a veteran, but I was lucky enough to come home with not too many issues, and I haven't had to deal with that. But even as a veteran, it doesn't personally affect me. I mean, these are my brothers and sisters. And so it's a veterans issue. I think we should be concerned about it from that aspect. But even, taking a step back, this isn't just a win for veterans if this passes. This is a win for Americans. This is a win for anyone who is a lover of freedom and wants to see more accountability in government. And I hope that years down the road we can use this as a case study to say, look what happens when we have real accountability in our government. It's going to be more efficient. It's going to be, we're going to be better served. Look how much better our veterans are doing because of this. And so I hope that years down the road that can be a case study. And this is a win for all veterans. And so that's just a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. As I said, we are focused on some veterans issues, but generally speaking, we're all about getting Americans engaged on the issues that are important in our day. Issues that are going to have a huge effect on our economic freedom. They're going to have a huge effect on even our national security. And we need to be worried about them. As veterans, as military families, and even just Americans who love our freedom and prosperity and don't want to see it go away. I mean, as concerned veterans for America, our mission statement is to stand for policies that preserve the freedom and prosperity that we as veterans and our families fought to defend. And so this isn't just a veterans cause. We're looking to get all Americans involved in the cause of liberty. And just as we as veterans fought overseas, as all Americans, we can fight here at home. To go back to that Admiral Mullen quote, once again, I do have some flyers if you're interested. We are having an event in Cleveland this coming Thursday where we are showing a quick video of a discussion that our organization had with Admiral Mullen on this very topic of debt and our national security and the future of our military. But then we're also bringing in a distinguished panel of guests. And so that panel is going to include veterans as well as public officials. And so we have Dave Greenspan, who's a Cuyahoga County councilman. This is up in Cleveland. I can get you all the information if you're interested. We're going to have our state director, who's an Iraqi war vet, and now our state director is Concerned Veterans for America here in Ohio. We're going to have a Marine Corps vet named Preston Woke, who is a city councilman at Meadow on the Lake, as well as I said, a Marine Corps vet. We're also going to have Greg Lawson, who is a policy analyst at the Buckeye Institute down in Columbus. So I think it's going to be a great event, great discussion, free food, great discussion, and really, digging into not just these issues on a theoretical basis, but how do some of these issues play into local veterans and local public officials, local politics, and local government. And so I think it's going to be a great event. As I said, if you have any questions, please feel free. I do have my iPad over here. Feel free to sign up, get updates on what we're doing in the area. as well as I do have, as I said, some literature and some flyers and business cards. Please feel free to keep in contact, and really do appreciate the invite. Have any questions? Please.
What is the House bill number?
It is House Bill 4031, and in the Senate, it is 2013. Senate Bill 2013. In the Senate, it was initially co-sponsored, it was initially sponsored by Marco Rubio, and in the House, it was initially sponsored by Representative Jeff Miller out of Florida. But as I said, we've had quite a few more co-sponsors since then, so it's really looking promising. One of the things, just a side note, one of the things with the Department of Veterans Affairs is it's not an issue of money. Every single year they've had an increase of budget. It's upwards of $25 billion over the past 5 years or extra. I think their budget has grown 60% over the past 5 or 6 years. Just constantly more and more money, and that is the solutions that have generally been presented. And as we all know, these are the same solutions that are presented everywhere. You have an issue, let's just throw some more money at it. Well, it's not that easy when you see that there's so much waste and mismanagement, and I mean there's bonuses that are going out to people that don't deserve it. So it's not a matter of money. The nice thing about this bill is it's utilizing the already beefed up VA budget, so it's not adding to the deficit. It's not adding to our spending at all. Just the stuff that we've already been handing and has been mismanagement at the VA. Any other questions?
Got comment.